$17.49 for one can of coffee in America. This used to be $11.99 a month and a half ago.
There was a time when Costco was the place you could stock up on a month's worth of groceries for the price of a single week. But now, every time people push their carts out the door, they're stunned by the number on the receipt. And that's not even the worst part. In just the past 2 weeks, prices on 10 essential foods at Costco have started creeping up little by little. Some items have jumped more than 20%, others have simply vanished from the shelves. There's no doubt anymore, the price crisis has quietly made its way into the very place that used to be America's savings paradise. Many blame tariffs. Others say Costco is shifting its strategy. But for shoppers, the reason doesn't matter as much as the result paying more for things that used to feel so familiar. In this video, we'll show you 10 Costco staples that are quietly spiking in price, and why if you don't grab them today by next week, it might already be too late. Number 1. Cooking oil. There isn't a single American kitchen that doesn't have cooking oil. Whether it's frying fish, searing meat, or simply tossing a salad, oil is always there. And at Costco, cooking oil has long been one of the best-selling items, thanks to its bulk size, affordable price, and the trusted labels like Kirkland Chosen Foods and Filippo Berrio. But that era is coming to an end. In just the past 3 weeks, prices on oils at Costco have risen 8 to 15%. Some have spiked as much as 20% with no warning at all. And what's even more unsettling, this trend shows no sign of stopping. There are 3 overlapping reasons behind it. First, many oils like avocado, olive, and canola are imported. Mexico, Italy, Spain, and Canada, the key suppliers, are all being hit by new tariff policies. When import costs rise, production costs in the US climb with them. Second, droughts and supply chain instability in Europe and South America have sharply reduced oil yields. And finally, something few notice, Costco is quietly changing its inventory strategy. Instead of stockpiling hundreds of thousands of gallons of oil ahead of time, like before, many stores are scaling back orders to avoid the risks of price swings. This leads to temporary supply gaps. You might walk into Costco today and see shelves full of canola oil, but come back a week later, that same product might be gone, or marked up another $3. The problem isn't just the money. Cooking oil isn't a luxury item. It's the foundation of nearly every home-cooked meal, especially for home-cooked seniors living alone or families already tightening their budgets after a rocky summer. When oil prices double, it doesn't just strain wallets, it reshapes dinner tables. You can swap steak for eggs, skip the pastries, even cut back on meat. But without oil, countless basic dishes simply can't be made. And not everyone knows how to cook with water or non-stick pans. The advice: check your pantry. A single bottle of oil can last 2 to 3 months if stored properly. If you can still grab it today at the old price, don't wait. Because the next time you come back, you might see that same bottle with a price tag 40% higher. And in that moment, you'll realize this isn't just a crisis over one product, it's a quiet shift creeping into every American meal. Number 2. Coffee. If you're an American, over 50 chances are your day starts with a hot cup of coffee. It doesn't need to be fancy, just rich enough, familiar enough, comforting enough. For many, it isn't just a drink, it's a ritual, the one thing that keeps mornings from spiraling into chaos. And Costco knows that. For years, it's been the go-to spot for anyone wanting to buy coffee in bulk. Big 1 to 2 kilo bags cheaper than the grocery store. Kirkland Signature, Starbucks Roast, San Francisco Bay, brands that have been steady fixtures in millions of kitchens. But lately, something has shifted, quietly yet noticeably. You don't need spreadsheets to see it. Just try finding the Kirkland Whole Bean 2.5 lb bag, the one that used to be on every Costco shelf. How many times have you not seen it lately? Or seen it but with a new higher price tag? The problem is buried deep in the supply chain. Coffee isn't grown in the US. Nearly all the beans Costco sells come from Colombia, Ethiopia, Vietnam, Guatemala. Countries battling droughts, volatile export prices, and shipping costs that have doubled. Stack all that together and the price of raw coffee imports has jumped 18% in just 2 months. Costco can absorb those costs for a while, but there's a limit. Instead of suddenly spiking prices, some warehouses are quietly shrinking the coffee aisle. Fewer jumbo bags, fewer combo packs. Shoppers who buy on autopilot are starting to feel a slight annoyance, the first warning sign that the market is tightening. And here's what many forget: older Americans drink coffee for more than the taste. Some use it as breakfast itself. Others rely on it to stay sharp through the day, especially when medication leaves them drained. For some, it's the one affordable pleasure left as everything else climbs in price. So if you see coffee at Costco today and the price hasn't yet crossed that uncomfortable line, this might be your last good chance to stock up. One big bag can last a month, keeps well, and saves far more than buying single boxes from smaller stores. Because one day soon you might still find coffee on the shelf, but not at a price that makes you feel good about starting your morning. And when that happens, even a simple daily ritual becomes something you have to think twice about. Number 3, imported spices. There's something fascinating about Americans. They'll pinch pennies on almost anything except spices. A shelf lined with nutmeg, cumin seeds, Hungarian paprika, white pepper, Indian curry. It's not just a cooking habit, it's a statement. A sign of a kitchen that's abundant, a life that refuses to settle for bland. And Costco has always been the perfect place for that. Giant jars of imported spices for half the price of the local market. A tub of Indian turmeric that lasts a year. A jar of Sri Lankan cinnamon that outshines anything at the corner grocery. It all gave shoppers a quiet confidence. Until recently. A sharp-eyed home cook doesn't need to read the price tags, just the shelf. Where there used to be 5 kinds of pepper, there are now 3. Moroccan cumin gone, Spanish paprika, only available now as a blended version, and in its place, substitutes. The same spice, but from somewhere else with a different label, a different flavor. No one announces it, no one warns you. But anyone who knows the taste of their own kitchen feels it. The stew doesn't taste quite right. The grilled meat is missing that little kick of heat. The big jars are slowly shrinking into smaller bottles. But the price tag bigger. There's no dramatic shock. Just a slow creeping disappearance of the things that gave American meals soul and character. The fading of that feeling of cooking your way without having to compromise because something's missing. Costco may still be the cheapest place to buy spices, but as imported goods get scarce, they'll keep only the most basic staples. The adventurous cooks, the ones who loved making Indian curries, Mexican salsas, Middle Eastern stews, will start cutting back. And maybe that won't leave people hungry, but it will make kitchens a little quieter, like music with the bass line missing. Number 4, imported cheese. It might seem like a small thing, but for many older Americans, it feels like a quiet loss. The cheese on their table just doesn't taste the same anymore. We're not talking about fancy high-end cheeses, just the basics. A sprinkle of mozzarella on Friday night pizza, a sharp slice of cheddar for a sandwich, a bit of Parmesan over a plate of spaghetti to bring the meal together. Simple, everyday things, and yet they become one of the newest battlefronts in the price surge. At Costco, many cheeses once imported straight from New Zealand, Canada, or Italy have quietly been swapped for domestic versions or blends. The price didn't go down. In fact, some jumped as much as 40% in just a few weeks. But the number on the price tag isn't what bothers shoppers the most. It's the unspoken change and the lack of explanation. The mozzarella that used to be silky now crumbles. The cheddar that once had that rich, sharp aroma now tastes flat and turns oily too fast. People don't always say it out loud, but they feel it. The grandkids' pizza doesn't taste quite as good as it did a few months ago. The weekend casserole feels like it's missing that something they'd relied on for decades. Here's the thing, most older Americans aren't making elaborate gourmet dishes, but they are fiercely loyal to flavor. The same cheese they've used for lasagna every holiday. The same bag of Parmesan they grab for quick weeknight dinners. Those habits aren't easy to change. But now they are changing. Not by choice, but because of price and supply chain shifts. When Costco began trimming its imported cheese selection, no one sent a memo. People only realized when their meals started tasting off, when that morning sandwich stopped being satisfying. And for many older shoppers, the ones who've spent a lifetime balancing a budget while still making meals that felt special, that's a small lingering scratch on their sense of control over life. No one is going to cry over a different tasting slice of cheese, but a lot of people are quietly thinking, if even the cheese I've trusted for years can't stay the same, what else can I really count on? Number 5, chocolate and cookies. Costco used to be the place for silky Belgian chocolate boxes, dark chocolate bars that weren't too sweet, and those buttery European cookie tins. All at prices that felt like a treat you didn't have to think twice about. But since June, those shelves have been thinning. The familiar favorites are vanishing, replaced by domestic versions. or imports with noticeably higher price tags. For someone younger, maybe that doesn't feel like a big deal. But for those on a fixed income, like retirees, every dollar matters. They notice when a cookie tin jumps by $1, when a chocolate bar creeps up by 20 cents. Because those little luxuries aren't impulse buys. They're part of the monthly budget. And when costs start pressing on even the tiniest indulgence, the feeling of being stripped of the right to treat yourself, even with a square of chocolate, turns into a frustration you can't quite put into words. The shortage isn't just about price. It's supply chain strain. Some Belgian and British distributors have pulled back shipments to the US as tariffs and shipping costs rise. The result, Costco locations along the East Coast are seeing their chocolate and cookie sections thin out, especially around holidays and weekends. Each return trip to the store reveals one more favorite quietly missing. No one is calling this a crisis, but for many it's a sign that life is losing its softness. The meals are still there, the bills still get paid, but that simple comfort, a cookie with tea, a bite of chocolate after dinner, is being replaced by the quiet thought, maybe I'll skip it next time. No one says it out loud, but there's a quiet hollowness spreading, tucked inside the smallest things. Number 6. Rice. Rice used to be the thing you didn't even think about when walking into Costco. The 25-pound bags of jasmine stacked high at the end of the aisle, brown rice neatly lined up in the organic section, and if you wandered a bit further, basmati from India with its delicate aroma. Each heavy bag brought a familiar comfort enough to fill you up, simple and always there. But that's quietly changing. No noise, no sudden shock. Just a small shift you notice when you go back. The price tag isn't what it used to be. $70 has turned into $22. Imported basmati from India disappears for weeks. Thai jasmine is replaced by a domestic version, less fragrant, less tender when cooked. There's no sign posted, no explanation. But that quiet disruption chips away at daily habits. What used to be the easiest choice is now something you have to check. Do they still have it today? At some Costco warehouses in the Northeast, customers have even seen limits. Only 2 bags of rice per trip. Not because demand has spiked, but because supply has been stretched thin by import tariffs and rising shipping costs. No one panics over rice. But the psychology matters when even rice, the most basic, steady thing, starts to shift. You have to wonder what's truly stable anymore. For many, rice isn't just a staple, it's what you eat when you're not feeling well. It's the quick dinner when the fridge is empty. It's the foundation for every kind of meal. From the simplest to the most elaborate, losing that sense of control over something so basic doesn't make you hungry. It makes you feel unsettled. And when every bag of rice suddenly needs more thought. Not because it's rare, but because the price and quality aren't what they used to be. It stops being about food. It becomes a signal even the things we thought would never change can shift. Not because of some giant disaster, but because of small creeping changes in policy costs and the way the system decides who gets what. Not everything falls apart at once, but sometimes all it takes is one bag of rice being harder to buy, and you start to realize the age of always enough might be fading. Number 7. Beef. One of the most striking things when you walk past Costco's meat section these days is how the price gap between different cuts of beef no longer makes sense. The budget-friendly cuts that used to be everywhere now show up only sporadically, while ribeye New York strip and prime cuts fill the shelves. At prices that make people stop, just to stare. Beef used to be flexible. You could grab the cheapest ground beef to make spaghetti a hearty stew or sloppy joes. If you had more to spend, you could go for rib steak, even a full brisket. But that range of choice, it's shrinking. Not because beef is disappearing, but because the cuts most familiar to everyday families are harder to reach than ever. At some Costco warehouses, 80/20 ground beef that used to sell for under $4 a pound has now crossed the $6 mark. And even then, it's not always in stock. Sometimes shoppers end up buying the pricier cuts, because that's all that's left on the shelf. It creates a subtle kind of forced buying. The food hasn't vanished, it's just only available in the expensive versions. This shift comes from several overlapping factors. New import tariffs on Canada have hit the supply of frozen beef, the kind that's processed, packaged, and ready for restaurants and for budget-conscious shoppers. Meanwhile, domestic suppliers are pushing premium cuts instead, because the profit margins are better. The result, families are quietly changing the way they cook smaller portions, swapping beef for chicken, or skipping certain traditional dishes altogether. And for people in states without strong cattle production, like California, Florida, or New York, that loss feels sharper. Of course, beef hasn't disappeared. Costco still has plenty. But what's different is this: not everyone can access the cuts they used to buy every week. And for many, this isn't just about money. It's about losing control over something that used to feel certain, losing the ability to choose what you want when you need it. Beef, once the easy decision to toss into the cart, has turned into a quiet calculation about value priorities and sometimes simply accepting the new reality. There's no big announcement, no clearance sign, just the look of the trays left on the shelf, and that's all you need to see to know something has shifted. Number 8. Costco food court sandwiches. You don't even have to step inside Costco. Just stopping by the food court is enough to feel the shift that's spreading. The sandwiches that were once the cheap classics, roasted chicken, provolone chicken, roast beef, aren't the easy grab-and-go choice they used to be. In just a few months, the price of a sandwich has crept up by $1 or $2. Not much for a single meal, but enough to make people think twice if they're grabbing lunch here 2 or 3 times a week, especially for those who rely on the Costco food court as their quick lunch fix. Office workers nearby, delivery drivers, parents swinging by after school. But the difference isn't just the new number on the menu board. It's that feeling of not quite the same when you pick up the sandwich. The slices of meat are thinner, the cheese isn't as generous, the sauce isn't as full. Tiny changes. Easy to miss if you only come once in a while. But for regulars, the missing pieces are obvious. Behind those small changes is a double squeeze, higher ingredient costs and pressure to keep profits steady. Deli meats, imported cheese, packaged bread, all are being hit by supply chain issues and import tariffs. Every thinner slice of roast beef isn't about cutting corners. It's about stretching costs across each sandwich served. For customers, though, the disappointment doesn't come as a sudden shock. It builds quietly. From the day your sandwich didn't quite fill you up to the day you paid $2 extra for the same meal. And then the thought creeps in, is this simple, cheap lunch still worth the stop? Nobody's rushing out to stockpile sandwiches. But when even a quick bite doesn't feel as whole as it used to, that's a sign. Not because a sandwich is life or death important, but because it used to be part of the rhythm. Easy, quick, familiar. And when that familiarity starts to crack, no one can say what else is next. Because if even a grab-and-go lunch becomes something you have to think about, then everything simple is slowly turning complicated. Number 9. Canadian butter. What's happening right now is a quiet disappearance. Those familiar 400 power G blocks of Canadian butter at Costco are starting to fade. Not gone entirely, but showing up in a hesitant way. Fewer options, higher prices, and those all too frequent temporarily out-of-stock signs. It starts with this. Canada has long been one of America's biggest suppliers of unsalted and organic butter, especially bulk shipments from Quebec and Ontario. Costco has always stocked them in large quantities because they were affordable, reliable, and high quality. But when trade barriers went up, import tariffs climbed, customs checks tightened, and clearance times dragged on. The first thing to take a hit was something you assumed would always be there: butter. The impact isn't just higher prices, it's a disruption of routines that had been smooth and steady for years. For some families, a block of butter isn't just for spreading on toast. It's the foundation of recipes passed down for generations. It's what you start with for baking sauces or roasted vegetables. When the price of a single block jumps 20%, people don't stop using butter. They cut back on dishes, trim recipes, and sometimes let go of long-held habits. At Costco, the biggest sign is substitution. Some Canadian brands are being swapped for domestic ones, at a higher price and smaller packages. That leaves you feeling like you're not just paying more, you're getting less while everything around you is also creeping up in cost. There's no butter crisis. Nobody's running out to hoard it. But when something as simple as butter makes you pause, it's not just about money anymore. It's about losing a sense of control. When even the most basic ingredient in the kitchen is caught up in high-level economic crossfire. And because so many decisions start in the kitchen, one block of butter can quietly become a signal of a much bigger shift happening piece by piece right in front of us. Number 10. Frozen salmon. Frozen salmon used to be the perfect Costco buy, convenient, nutritious, easy to cook, and able to sit in the freezer for weeks. That's why it was a staple in so many busy families' carts. for people trying to keep a healthy meal on the table despite hectic schedules. But that good, cheap, easy era is quietly slipping away. In just a few months, the price of frozen salmon, especially wild-caught from Alaska or imported Atlantic salmon, has climbed over 15%. But the shift isn't just on the price tag. Instead of thick, hearty cuts neatly packed, more shoppers are noticing smaller, thinner fillets, sometimes with an extra layer of ice glaze that feels heavier than it should. No one is spelling it out, but the supply chain cracks have been visible for a while. Salmon from cold waters like British Columbia or northern Canada, Costco's main sources, are being hit on multiple fronts: higher shipping costs, new trade policies, and import tariffs. For retailers like Costco, that means a tough choice: raise prices outright or quietly adjust how products are packaged. And for consumers, those subtle changes are easy to miss, until the portion on the dinner plate gets smaller while the grocery budget doesn't stretch any further. Salmon used to be the middle ground between luxury and necessity. Not the cheapest, but worth it. Perfect for older adults on heart-healthy diets or families wanting clean protein for their kids. Now even that choice is becoming a question mark. It's not just the rising cost, it's the fading sense of stability. When a product you've trusted for years starts coming in thinner, lighter, smaller pieces, you start to wonder what else is changing that you can't see. And with every bill climbing, from power and gas to a single loaf of bread, seeing even frozen salmon shrink isn't just about food. It's a sign that even the healthy, convenient, reliable choices aren't immune to the squeeze. Because when the things you counted on to store, well, eat well, trust well, start to wobble. The real question isn't what's for dinner. It's how much more of the familiar will keep changing. And how are we supposed to keep up? What we've just gone through isn't simply a story about prices. It's the sign of a long, steady slide, where the products that used to anchor an American kitchen are becoming weighty lines on the receipt. From cooking oil to beef, from a block of cheese to a bag of frozen fish. Every small shift points to something bigger, a supply chain bending out of shape with consumers footing the bill. We're not here to tell you what to buy or how much to stock up. We're here to ask a harder question of Costco, the place once seen as America's last fortress of low prices. Can't hold the line. What does that really say about the economy we're living in?
This video does not promote division within the United States or encourage segregation. All content is presented for the purpose of exploration, analysis, and fostering discussion based on current events, public sentiment, and social trends. We fully respect the United States Constitution and all federal regulations. If today's analysis made you think, drop a comment so we can keep the conversations going. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you will never miss our next independent deep dive.